The global order just suffered a lethal, silent heart attack in the Persian Gulf. Forget the missiles in the fire for a moment. The real war was won with a single, clinical sentence from Tehran that has effectively bankrupted 50 years of American history. The ultimatum is final. Pay in Chinese Yuan, or the oil stays in the ground. For the first time since the 1974 Nixon-era pact, the US dollar has been evicted from the world's most vital energy corridor. And as the sirens of war fade, they are being replaced by the cold, digital ticking of a new financial era. This is the birth of the Petro-Yuan. And for the United States, the absolute worst nightmare has not only begun, it has already cleared the horizon. For 5 decades, every industrial engine on this planet ran on a singular forced habit, the greenback. This was the petrodollar, a structural addiction that required every nation on Earth to hold massive reserves of US currency just to keep their lights on. This permanent global demand allowed Washington to print endless wealth, fund 800 military bases, and project force across every ocean without ever worrying about a balanced budget. But tonight, that invisible spine has been snapped. By demanding yuan for every barrel of oil passing through the Strait of Hormuz, Iran hasn't just blocked a waterway, they have dismantled the primary mechanism of Western power. We are witnessing a forced migration of global wealth, where the dollar is being treated like a toxic asset, and China's cross-border interbank payment system, or CIPS, has become the only bridge to economic survival. While the world was distracted by the terrifying physics of the Fateh 2 hypersonic missile and the impossible 4-minute and 20-second warning cycles, the real oil gambit was moving in the shadows. Since the outbreak of hostilities, at least 11.7 million barrels of crude have already been traded entirely outside the reach of the US Treasury. The IRGC has transformed from a military force into the world's most aggressive financial regulator, enforcing a new law of the sea. If your bank is wired to Beijing, the gates of the ocean swing open. If you are tethered to the US-led SWIFT system, you are left to rot at anchor. This isn't a temporary blockade. It is a clinical, strategic decapitation of American hegemony that no aircraft carrier strike group can prevent. The ships are moving, the oil is flowing, but the money is no longer flowing back to New York or London. The desperation in Washington is now palpable, as the US finds itself caught in a humiliating resource trap of its own making. To prevent a total collapse of the global energy market and keep domestic gas prices from hitting double digits, the administration has been forced to quietly ease sanctions on Russian oil. It is a geopolitical irony of the highest order. In an attempt to crush the Iranian threat, the United States has accidentally been forced to fund the Russian war machine. Every day, the strait remains a yuan-only zone. The dollar's structural demand weakens further, while higher oil prices pour billions of yuan and rubles into Moscow and Tehran. China, meanwhile, hasn't had to fire a single shot. They have simply waited for the moment when the world's most vital energy valve was handed to them on a silver platter, effectively winning the war for the 21st century without ever crossing a border. The psychological realization now rippling through G7 capitals is more destabilizing than any physical strike could ever be. Once a nation like India or Turkey realizes they can buy oil in yuan and bypass American sanctions entirely, the habit of the dollar is broken forever. This is a terminal shift in the global hierarchy. The quiet authority that came from being the world's reserve currency is vanishing in the narrow, salt-choked waters between Iran and Oman. The world is watching the first fleet of yuan-only tankers clearing the strait, knowing that each one carries more than just oil. They carry the remains of an American era that lasted half a century and ended in a single, silent afternoon. The transition from a dollar-dominant world to a fractured one isn't just happening in the bank ledgers of Shanghai. It is being enforced by a terrifying new reality beneath the waves of the Persian Gulf. For years, the US Navy maintained a silent, absolute grip on the seabed through a classified network of underwater sensor arrays and automated drone docking stations. These eyes under the water were designed to track every Iranian submarine and every mine-laying operation in real time. But in a coordinated strike that caught the Pentagon's AI-driven surveillance systems completely off guard, Iran deployed its own fleet of Lamprey kamikaze subdrones. These low-cost, high-impact assets didn't target the massive aircraft carriers on the surface. They went for the cables. By severing the fiber-optic lifelines of America's underwater drone bases, Tehran has effectively blinded the Fifth Fleet. The Persian Gulf has become a dark zone, a tactical vacuum where the IRGC can move mines and missiles with zero digital footprint, rendering the billion-dollar Aegis defense systems on the surface nothing more than expensive, blind targets. This blinding of the Navy's sensors has paved the way for the most aggressive phase of the yuan oil transition. With the US unable to guarantee safe passage for unauthorized tankers, the global insurance market, the literal gatekeeper of world trade, has suffered a total nervous breakdown. Lloyd's of London and other major maritime insurers have seen premiums for dollar-denominated hulls skyrocket by 400% in just 10 days. However, a new player has emerged from the chaos, the China Reinsurance Group. They are now offering blue lane insurance at a fraction of the cost, but with one non-negotiable condition. The entire trade, from the insurance premium to the crude oil itself, must be settled through the CIPS network in Chinese Yuan. This is the financial pincer move. By creating a physical danger that only China can financially mitigate, Tehran and Beijing have turned the Strait of Hormuz into a filter that effectively leaches the dollar out of the global energy supply chain. The ripple effects of this yuan-only mandate are now causing a violent civil war within the G7. Traditional American allies, faced with the prospect of total industrial collapse as their strategic petroleum reserves dwindle to critical levels, are beginning to break ranks. We are seeing shadow diplomacy at an unprecedented scale. European capitals, while publicly condemning the Iranian strikes, are reportedly opening secret accounts in Shanghai to facilitate the purchase of yuan. They are caught in an impossible choice: maintain the decades-old transatlantic alliance and watch their economies go dark, or embrace the yuan and survive. This is the true meaning of the worst nightmare. The US is not just losing a war against an adversary, it is losing its grip on its friends. The petrodollar isn't being killed by an enemy's missile. It is being abandoned by its own users, out of pure, cold-blooded necessity. While the US Treasury scrambles to weaponize what remains of its sanctions power, they have hit a brick wall known as the M-Bridge project. This is a multi-central bank digital currency platform that allows Iran and China to settle trades instantly, peer-to-peer, without ever touching a Western server or a dollar clearinghouse. It is the ultimate dark fiber of global finance. Because these transactions happen on a private, decentralized ledger, the US has no way to see them, let alone stop them. The 11.7 million barrels we discussed earlier didn't just move in yuan. They moved through a digital ghost gate that makes traditional sanctions look like a paper shield against a hypersonic jet. Washington is fighting a 20th century economic war against the 21st century digital fortress. And the data shows that every hour the US delays a resolution, another $1 trillion of global trade moves permanently into this invisible system. As we look at the maps of the Gulf today, the reality is stark. The American era was built on the idea that the dollar was as good as gold because it was backed by the most powerful military in human history. But when that military can no longer protect the seabed sensors, and when that currency can no longer buy the oil needed to fuel the fleet, the illusion shatters. The Yuan ultimatum is a signal to every developing nation on the planet that the American umbrella has holes in it. The era of the unipolar moment is being buried in the silt of the Persian Gulf, and in its place, a new, colder, and more fragmented world is rising. One where the price of survival is no longer measured in loyalty to Washington, but in the ability to secure a yuan-only permit from a drone-protected terminal in Jask.